This is an at-home install video for the Cajun Gunworks Full Pro package. Only you can decide if this makes sense for you in terms of the pricing, your technical abilities for smithing, etc. Also, it may void your warranty and you may suffer some minor damage, like marring your frame, for example. So you have to decide if this makes sense for you, if you have the time and the ability to do this project, and it's all at your own risk. Alright guys, I'm going to do a video review of the Cajun Gunworks Pro Package upgrade for the SP01 Tactical. This gun is empty, it's been checked, you'll have to believe me. I've got the Pro Package kit here. I got some extra springs and such to play around with the recoil, and got an installation kit that I ordered as well. Tools for this project: we got 800 and 1000 grit sandpaper for internal polish. We got a 3/32 pin punch, and I got some backup punches just in case that doesn't work out. It's basic screwdrivers, hammer, and I got a Dremel Micro for an internal polish. I didn't really use the Dremel tool. All right, guys, I want to add a few additional parts that I ordered upon the recommendation of some folks online. I got the Cajun Gunworks OEM strut, and apparently it's really hard to get the pin out. Factory pins are staked. This will be my new strut to go with the new setup. Here is the installation kit that I ordered. It's like 12 bucks online, and I got a stainless steel guide rod and some recoil springs. I decided to try a 12-pound, the red, and the green 13-pound to improve with the recoil. Also get some blue Loctite. Alright guys, now I've got it field stripped here. The first step, I'm going to take the screwdriver and take the grips off. Alright guys, I got the grips off, as you can see. Next step, I got to get this pin out here. In order to get this pin out, you need to put some pressure on this lanyard loop here. So you have to push down and push that pin out. As you can see, it came out nice and easy with the pin punch, and I'm going to just gently pull that out. So actually, to get this spring out, you have to push down, get this thing out, and that releases the tension so you can pull it out. So now, as you can see, we got these out. Separated nicely. Next step, I slipped a little bit of masking tape under there so I don't mar up this piece as I'm prying this off. And to go from the right side, as you can see there, to pop that out. Okay? So after unsuccessfully prying the decocker off, I went to find, if you look very closely, I don't know if this will focus, there's a little lever there you gotta push, which hits this spring, which releases it from that point there. All right, I'm gonna tell you about a really tough part of this process. So the right-handed decocker has a, I'll show you here, it's got like a locking lever, okay, and you can't just pry it off. You have to get into that thing and push that in while you're prying it in. So the way I did this is I used a small screwdriver to get in and push the lever, while I had another screwdriver on the top part to pop it off. Meanwhile, I had oiled up this portion here. So good luck with that. All right, next step. In order to take out this side, you need to raise this little spring right in here. All right, next step. I'm gonna take this kit here, and we're gonna take out that pin, and I'm gonna try to maybe use this slave pin as assistance. And then, punch over here too. Okay. I might throw a little tape on there so I don't mar it up anymore. All right, so in getting the decocker all pushed out, got this spring out, and next step is we're going to be pushing up on this piece here and then pushing out this pin which holds the hammer and strut assembly in place. Before that, I'm going to try to get this part out right here. So we got all those pieces out there. Next part, as I said, you push up on that little retaining pin and then you push that out. As you can see here, take this piece out here. Put that there. So, see there, a little tiny bit of marring there, but it's a duty gun. And good time to wipe it all down. All right, next step, as you can see, I've taped up this area. We're gonna push this pin out here for the trigger retention pin. Here's a little warning: as you remove this pin here for the trigger, be careful that this trigger return spring is gonna go flying. So, you know, maybe put a backstop here or something so you can catch it. Mine flew across the room and bounced off the refrigerator. Luckily there was nothing over there, so I was able to find it. So here's that trigger return spring, and you know, these things tend to break, so I ordered an extra one from Cajun. All right, as you can see here, I got the pin most of the way out. You can grab just you know, needle nose pliers or something and pull that guy out to get this trigger assembly out. All right, next part, we get the firing pin out. So you take your 3/32 punch to this part right here, and be careful because there is a firing pin spring. Okay. Okay, just to let you guys know here, I got that punch through, kind of held the punch in the spot, and kind of propped it up on tape to punch all these pins out. Now here's the firing pin coming out right there. So I'll just pull it out now. That and spring assembly. So okay guys, here's a little closer look at the firing pin spring and firing pin block.
Just forget that lifter spring.
Alright, a quick short video to show you guys where to polish if you should so choose. A lot of these points will be polished up over time, over heavy use of the gun, but you know, it's up to you if you like to touch up these points, make friction obviously a little bit less, and clean up the action a little bit. It's up to you at your own risk. Again, so points here, which, I mean, to me this looks pretty smooth already, and then this ridge back here, if you'd like, which I probably won't touch any of this stuff. You can see along the rails. Now, just beware, if you start taking material off of here, you might obviously affect the function, like the slide stop, etc. So I'm probably not going to touch any of that. Other points to clean up would be this hammer strut. If you like, you can clean that up a little bit with some fine sandpaper. I got an extra one. I'll leave this one with my stock hammer kit. Other points to polish up would be, look at the points of wear on the gun. I took the gun to the range, shot a couple hundred rounds, just get a little bit of wear, give me an indicator of what parts to start polishing if I so choose. So as you can see, these points of contact here on the hammer bar, sear cage, you can kind of see different spots of wear. You can polish that up and clean it up a little bit. And the firing pin block, which you can see here, I've already started cleaning it up a little bit. Once you've polished everything to your satisfaction, you can start reassembly. As you can see here, I've polished out parts of the trigger bar there, and I bought a new hammer strut, polished that out, contact points also there. As you can see, one of the things you want to do is kind of keep things in appropriate piles, as you can see here. So we're going to go with the firing pin assembly next. So I'm going to put this in, and what I'm going to do is make sure you get your new spring. Just goes in there. Here. This grooves away. I'm going to get this off camera for a second. Okay, as you can see here, we're going to get this set up. So, grooves have to line up with the firing pin block. So I'm going to push this in. Okay. So you're going to want to depress the firing pin block as you slide the firing pin in and line it up. Okay, now we're going to check the function of the firing pin. This is an extended firing pin, so it does stick out a little bit. Let's get it over in the light a little bit better. So you're going to press down on the firing pin block and push out and see if it protrudes to ignite the primer. So put this down here. So we're going to be pushing down the firing pin block. As you can see, pushing down the firing pin block. We hit the hammer, and then as we go, we see it's working. Okay, and holding in place. Next steps, we're going to drive this tiny pin through here. Then we're going to go on this hammer. So, get this set up like so. Got my new polished strut here. Get that set up like that. And then drive these pins to hold that in place. Now for the most important part of the video, if you use the competition legal hammer with the Cajun Gun Works pins, which do not stake, and you don't Loctite them, your gun will probably jam like mine did. Clean and degrease the hammer, the strut, the disconnector, and the pins. Assemble, and then apply a small drop of Loctite to the tip of each pin and cure for 24 hours. All right, putting in the firing pin now. I've got the new springs here. 1, 2, got the firing pin and the retention roll pin there. So I want to show you. When you put this firing pin in, this has to line up with this groove. So these notches have to be up as you go in. I found out the easiest way to do this, put spring first. Number one, spring. Get that in there. Number two, line up this notch with your expected position of the firing pin. Then you're going to push that down while you seat this, and again, these grooves have to be up. Okay, I'm going to do this off camera as I depress this and push this in. Alright, so we've got the firing pin in there, and as you can see there, the pin is partially blocking the hole. So in order to get that in, you have to get an extra set of hands. Push the block down while you're pushing the firing pin in, which I can't do with one hand, so I'm going to get an extra set of hands. And as I push that in, for now I'm going to get this slave pin and drop it in there. And then I'm going to drive this roll pin in later. So here we go. We're going to go firing pin block, depress it, push the firing pin, 2, so 1, 2, and you'll kind of see the slave pin trying to make its way into the hole. I'll give a little help. Done. See, it's in now, and I'll just replace that with this. It's a quick video to show you next step for the 85 combat trigger assembly. So one thing you're going to want to do is you're going to want to degrease it. So I've used some nail polish remover for this. It has a single Allen screw, as you can see, which I have degreased with some nail polish remover. To start, let that sit aside, let it dry, because that's going to be in use upon assembly of the firearm and adjustments per their instructions. And I've done a light polish there on the trigger bar, contact points, as you can see there. I've also got the reduced power trigger return spring and floating trigger pins. So I'm going to get this all assembled in here. Alright, so now I'm just going to show you the 85 combat trigger setup. So basically, you line up your trigger bar like so. Get your pin to hold that, and this with your retention pin there. This spring will be set up so that the longest part is forward as it contacts with the frame. Also, this particular trigger has a set screw there, an Allen screw that comes with it, and that'll be a final step to set up the appropriate position of the trigger. Had to degrease it first, so set that aside, get some degreasing of it, and ran some through the hole there, but that'll be a final step later. So we're just going to get this assembled for now. Alright, this is a little tricky. So in order to get this set, you've got your pin there, trigger's in place. You want to get the reduced power trigger return spring in place, and in order to get that set, there's a roll pin in there that you have to push the spring down, longest part forward, while you're putting the roll pin across to hold it in place from there, you install it into the gun, and the frontward part of the spring will go in that groove. So I use this as a placeholder to get the trigger mechanism back in alignment, and then you use the Cajun Gunworks floating trigger pin, and you use that to displace the old, that's just like a roll pin that you use to place as a placeholder. And then you want to make sure that the longest part of the trigger spring is forward. And as you can see, it's working. Okay, so I have set up the new hammer system here, as you can see. Pretty straightforward. Lock tight those hammer strut pins. Next step, I've got to lift this up. So where is it here? Yeah, it's already lifted. So lift this up. This pin comes from the right side. This pin here comes from the right side. Hold this hammer assembly in place. And as soon as that's set up, I'm going to move on to the wonderful disconnector. Decocker model, actually. Sorry, the decocker model with sear assembly cage. So, luckily, some of the videos I thought were a little hard to follow or hard to see things. So I'm trying to give a little bit better visualization for you guys. So, luckily, I have a SP01 that's assembled. Take a good look at this decocker here, decocker model sear assembly, and you'll see how everything's set up. So the new, and here's the partially assembled unit that I have here. So the new Cajun Gunworks part for the firing pin block lifter, as you can see here, the I'll call it the beak. The beak is pointed rearwards and on top. This whole thing looks like a duck to me, so I'm going to call this duck forward, and that part is going to be beak back. Okay, then you've got the sear, the actual sear, which is going to have the shiny part that you probably buffed out underneath. So that's got to get underneath there. And then this last part I got a little confused on, the decocker. I'm going to go back to my model here. So as you can see here, the decocker has a shiny little part forward that actuates that part, which you're going to put through at the end. So if I want to decock, you're going to see the function of this here. Okay. So in order to get that all lined up, you want to take this part and make sure that the shiny part is forward there and that it is lined up with that ledge there. This is the top, and I go underneath. I've got a little slave pin holding everything together, and you can see it from underneath. All right, top and bottom. All right, now the springs. The way I'm going to do this is similar to one of the guys did on a video. I'm going to use a combination of this punch and the slave pin, and I'm going to kind of rock this in while I'm putting a spring in, and then rock it out, and vice versa. So take a look at these springs quick. So let me get a light. Where's my light? Here it is. So you can see these springs all have kind of what I would call a underthrow. So it's going to be like this, where there's an underthrow. So as you line it up, it's going to be like that. So This is going to be the spring for the decocker. It has a little hook on it that goes underneath the whole mechanism. And this part gets put in there. That's the first spring. The second spring is for the sear. It has a long curvy part there. Long curvy part. And again, it's like an underthrow. So it's going to be lined up like that. And then this is the last one, and that's for the, it's going to be U-shaped. It's for the firing pin block lifter, and that will be in an orientation, as you can see, kind of outside of everything. Okay, so you're going to go firing pin block lifter spring, followed by firing pin block lifter, and then sear spring, and then decocker spring, decocker, and that's it. And then once you get all that, place the pin, and get it in place in your own particular gun. I'll show this assembly a couple more times because it's difficult. One of the most frustrating parts of this is this sear cage for decocker models. So I'm going to show you a few things. So this thing's like a duck, okay, and shiny parts underneath that you've polished, okay. The new Cajun Gunworks firing pin block lifter device has a hook on it that goes back. Then you've got your sear, and make sure you don't mess this up. I had the whole thing put together and I found out my sear was upside down, so I had to take it all apart again. So sear means the shiny part underneath, and then this is your decocker device. There's a little shiny part there that's going to actuate with this once you get it all set up. And let me show you the springs. So springs number 1. These are all going to be kind of underthrow springs, I want to call them. So like a roll of toilet paper, this is going to go under. Moving forward here, I'll show you my SP01 for comparison. This is decocker. And you can see all these springs kind of throw under. So the first spring you're going to see there in between the sear device, you're going to have the decocker spring, sear spring, and the last one is this U-shaped spring for the firing pin block lifter, okay? And that's going to seat into a little tiny notch that you can see there next to the device, or along the arm of the device, okay? It's kind of difficult to put this all together, so you're going to want to use 2 pins. We have the slave pin that was included in the extra kit that I bought there. The starter punch with slave pin kit. And then I'm going to use another push pin to kind of ease the springs in one at a time. Okay, so I'm going to start with the decocker spring again, underthrow, and oriented like this, followed by this one, long arm forward, underthrow, followed by this guy. Okay, once you get all that set up, then once you get them set, the hard part is coming under here and getting the decocker spring to go under that arm right there. Okay, not that one, the other one. This arm. Okay, it's the hard part. Good luck. You're probably going to end up losing this thing 5, 6, 10 times during your install. So for the low price of $3, why don't you go ahead and order 2, maybe even 3 more, so when you lose them, you don't derail your installation. So the way that you're going to put these in is you're going to use a slave pin and another similar device to put the springs in each slot. So the first spring here is for the decocker. It's got a little hook on the bottom. This goes kind of like an underthrow spring, like that. And it's going to go into that first little ridge there, as you can see here. and a little hook is going to go underneath. The second spring you're going to slide in there is going to be for the sear, and it's going to have a long arm going into this longer little groove. And the last spring is going to be this firing pin block lifter spring. Very careful with this one. It tends to fly away and get lost. That's going to be in this orientation. Points up. And this last little ridge, and there's a little tiny ridge in there where it has to seat. Okay, and be careful. So you're going to basically use these two to put the spring in, and then lock it, put the spring in, lock it, and then put the last spring in, and push this all the way through. Okay? Good luck. Alright, now you got to make sure that all your springs are in the correct orientation. So the firing pin lifter spring should be in. I put it under tension with the pliers and very, very gently walked it into the hole while pushing the slave pin in. Just be careful, you're going to lose it probably 5-10 times. So kind of do it in a clean environment. The sear spring, both ends of it need to be up. Okay, I've put this together with the smaller part underneath and had it redo the whole thing. So that's, just make sure that both ends of that are up, and it should be good. And the last one is the decocker, this little hook spring. Okay, so that little part of the spring has to be walked up into that little hole. I'm going to use a flathead screwdriver. Okay. Alright guys, if you've struggled with this for a while, get all the springs in, get everything working, check to make sure your decocker's under spring tension, springs are in proper orientation, as you can see there, and your firing pin block lifter also is under spring tension with that wonderful little easy to lose spring locked in the ledge. Okay, next step. Previously set up the hammer assembly there, so this will go in like so. Remember, blue Loctite hammer strut pins. This is going to go in, I call it duck forward, and this part is going to line up with the back of your frame. In there, okay? Now, to kind of give you a point of reference, here's my SP01, fully assembled at that point. Okay, and those grooves right there in the back of this cage, and those grooves there. Now, when you put this back into place, you're going to have to go quickly, because if you don't, the springs are going to fly out. So you're going to pop your slave pin in, set this in here, and then use your I'll call it a retention pin to pop through your slave pin quickly. Alright, as you can see here, we got everything in. The function check. Check the decocker, make sure that that's still under tension, make sure that it works. See, you can cock it, but you can't fire. I noticed that one of the springs is kind of poking through from the sear spring, so I'm going to have to gently pull that up while I slide the next part of the decocking mechanism through the hole and get that set. Okay, that's the next step. Alright, once you got everything in, make sure function check, make sure everything, I mean obviously you're not going to be able to fire that gun, but the decocker works great, and that's that. Next step, your hammer spring assembly. Get this go in here. I've already lightly polished the edges of that, kind of smoothing up this this action a little bit. Now, what you're going to want to do is get this through the hole, obviously, that hole, and then you're going to use the lanyard pointed forward. You're going to slide that in, catch it. You use the table as leverage, and then this has to be popped forward to that groove. Once you have it all set up there, put that retention pin in, and good to go. All right, we got everything pretty much set up there. So lighter and double action. Single action is nice. I haven't even oiled this up yet, so I'll show you the reset now. Well, I can't really do the reset, obviously, but all right, basically finished product here. I've got one last thing, and that's to set the trigger return. Actually, the over travel screw. And that's going to take a little bit of trial and error, but I just want to show you basically a finished product as it goes. So here's your double action pull, single action. Very nice. And let's do a reset check. I'm going to set you down for a second. Actually, let's just do it like this. Very short. It's a P01 for comparison.